the person actually playing the role of God in this movie. Of course, it's all purely imagination, but still there is very interesting conversation. And I'm going to start this with the, let us hear this, what they have to say.
Oh, excuse me, can I get a refill, please?
Coming right up. Excuse me, are you all right?
Yeah. No, it's a long story.
Well, I like stories. I'm considered a bit of a storyteller myself.
My husband, you heard of New York's Noah?
The guy who's building the ark.
That's him.
I love that story. Noah in the ark. You know, a lot of people miss the point of that story. They think it's about God's wrath and anger. They love it when God gets angry.
What is the story about then, the ark?
Well, I think it's a love story about believing in each other. You know, the animals showed up in pairs. They stood by each other, side by side, just like Noah and his family. Everybody entered the ark side by side.
But my husband says God told him to do it. What do you do with that?
Sounds like an opportunity. Let me ask you something. If someone prays for patience, you think God gives them patience? Or does he give them the opportunity to be patient? If he prays for courage, does God give them courage, or does he give them opportunity to be courageous? If someone prayed for the family to be closer, do you think God zaps them with warm, fuzzy feelings? Or does he give them opportunities to love each other? I gotta run. A lot of people to serve. Enjoy.
Today's topic is called the opportunity loop. If we were to endeavor seriously for attaining perfection in spiritual advancement, in spiritual knowledge, in self-realization, do you think the Supreme Lord would simply bestow that knowledge instantly, or will he give opportunity for us to purify ourselves, to purify our thoughts, our mind, and our actions, and thereby elevate ourselves so that we don't fall down in the future? So that is the topic of today's class, the opportunity loop. But first we start with prayers. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Any one person can come off of mute. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Narayanam Namaskritya.
Narayanam Namaskritya.
Eva Narottamam.
Naram Chaiva Narottamam.
Devim Saraswatim Vyasam.
Devim Saraswatim Vyasam.
Jayamudirayet.
Tato Jayamudiraye.
Ayeshu Abhadreshu.
Ashtaprayeshu Bhadreshu.
Yam Bhagavata Sevaya.
Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya.
Uttama Shloke.
Bhagavati Uttama Shloke.
Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki.
Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki.
Reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita, chapter 6, text 43. Tatra
Tatra
Buddhi Samyogam.
Buddhi Samyogam.
Tatratam Buddhi Samyogam.
Tatratam Buddhi Samyogam.
Labhate
Lavate
Purva
Paurva
Dehikam.
Dehikam.
Labhate Paurva Devikam.
Lavate Paurva Dehikam.
Yatate
Yatate
Cha
Cha
Tatataha
Tatataha
Bhuyaha.
Bhuyaha.
Yatate Cha Tato Bhuyaha.
Yatate Cha Sato Bhuyaha.
Samsiddhau
Samisiddhau
Kuru Nandana
Kuru Nandana.
Samsiddhau Kuru Nandana.
Samsiddhau Kuru Nandana.
Tatra tam buddhi samyogam.
Tatratam Buddhi Samyogam.
Labhate paurvadehikam.
Labhate Paurvadehikam.
Yadate cha tato bhuyah.
Yadate cha tato bhuya.
Samsiddhau Kuru Nandana.
Samsiddhau Kuru Nandana.
Tatra tam buddhi samyogam.
Tatra Buddhi Samyogam.
Labhate paurvadehikam.
Labhate Paurvadehikam.
Yadate cha tato bhuyah.
Yatate cha tato bhuyaha.
Samsiddhau Kuru Nandana.
Samsiddhau Kuru Nandana.
Tatra tam buddhi samyogam.
Tatratam Buddhi Samyogam.
Labhate paurvadehikam.
Labhate Paurvadehikam.
Yadate cha tato bhuyah.
Yadate cha tato bhuyaha.
Samsiddhau Kuru Nandana.
Samsiddhau Kuru Nandana.
Tatra tam buddhi samyogam. Labhate paurvadehikam. Yatate cha tato bhuyah. Samsiddhau Kuru Nandana.
Tatratam Buddhi Samyogam.
Tatra tam buddhi samyogam.
Labhate Paurvadehikam.
Labhate paurvadehikam.
Yadate cha tato bhuyaha.
Yatate cha tato bhuyah.
Samsiddhau Kuru Nandana.
Samsiddhau Kuru Nandana. Online.
Tatratam buddhi samyogam
Tatra tam buddhi samyogam.
labhate purvadehikam
Labhate paurvadehikam.
yatate cha tato bhuyaha
Yatate cha tato bhuyah.
samsiddhau kuru nandana.
Samsiddhau Kuru Nandana.
तत्र तं बुद्धिसंयोगं
Tatra tam buddhi samyogam.
लभते पौर्वदेहिकं
Labhate paurvadehikam.
यतते च ततो भूयः
Yatate cha tato bhuyah.
संसिद्धो कुरु नन्दन
Samsiddhau Kuru Nandana.
तत्र तं बुद्धिसंयोगं
Tatra tam buddhi samyogam.
लभते पौर्वदेहिकं
Labhate paurvadehikam.
यतते च ततो भूयः
Yatate cha tato bhuyah.
संसिद्धौ कुरु नन्दन
Samsiddhau Kuru Nandana.
तत्र तं बुद्धिसंयोगं
Tatra tam buddhi samyogam.
लभते पौर्वदेहिकं
Labhate paurvadehikam.
यतते च ततो भूयः
Yatate cha tato bhuyah.
संसिद्धौ कुरु नन्दन.
Samsiddhau Kuru Nandana.
तत्र तं बुद्धिसंयोगं
Tatra tam buddhi samyogam.
लभते पौर्वदेहिकं
Labhate paurvadehikam.
यतते च ततो भूयः
Yatate cha tato bhuyah.
संसिद्धौ कुरु नन्दन
Samsiddhau Kuru Nandana.
Gurunanda. Tatra tam buddhi samyogam
Tatra tam buddhi samyogam.
labate paurvadehikam
Labhate paurvadehikam.
yatate cha tato bhuyaha
Yatate cha tato bhuyah.
samsiddhau kuru nandana.
Samsiddhau Kuru Nandana.
तत्र तं बुद्धिसंयोगं
Tatra tam buddhi samyogam.
लभते पौर्वदेहिकं
Labhate paurvadehikam.
यतते च ततो भूयः
Yatate cha tato bhuyah.
संसिद्धौ कुरु नन्दन
Samsiddhau Kuru Nandana. Tatra thereupon. Tam that. Buddhi samyogam. Revival of such consciousness. Labhate regains. Paurva previous. Dehikam bodily consciousness. Yatate endeavors. Cha also. Tataha thereafter. Bhuyaha again. Samsiddhau for perfection. Kuru Nandana, O son of Kuru. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace. A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Translation. On taking such a birth, he again revives the divine consciousness of his previous life, and he tries to make further progress in order to achieve complete success, O son of Kuru. Translation with repetition. On taking such a birth, he again revives the divine consciousness of his previous life, and he tries to make further progress in order to achieve complete success, O son of Kuru. Purport. King Bharata, who took his third birth in the family of a good Brahmana, is an example of good birth for revival of previous transcendental consciousness. King Bharata was the emperor of the world, and since his time, this planet is known among the demigods as Bharatavarsha. Formerly, it was known as Ilavrita The emperor, at an early age, retired for spiritual perfection, but failed to achieve success. In his next life, he took birth in a family of a good Brahmana and was known as Jadabharata because he always remained secluded and did not talk to anyone. And later on, he was discovered as the greatest transcendentalist by King Rahugana. From his life, it is understood that transcendental endeavors or practice of yoga never go in vain. By the grace of the Lord, the transcendentalist gets repeated opportunities for complete perfection in Krishna consciousness. Thus ends the wonderful transcendental purport. Om Ajnanatirmirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Shri Mate Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. It's a very wonderful, hope-giving verse. We have been reading these set of verses from the verse 37 onwards, and including today's verse, as well as two more verses to go. There is a section in the 6th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. There are 4 sections, and we had seen how the 4 sections have been given the acronym EASY, E-A-S-Y. I don't know if you all remember this. The first section, E, stands for enemy or friend. The mind is the enemy or is it the friend? We've seen that. And the next section, A, stood for Ashtanga Yoga. There is a detailed description of Ashtanga Yoga. And then the third section is the section that we're reading now. We're coming towards the end of the section, where there's a description of success or failure. What happens to a transcendentalist? That if he does not succeed, then what would happen? And the last section talks about the yogi, the topmost yogi. So in this section where Krishna is talking about success or failure, it is actually a response to Arjuna's question. which is what this section starts with, 37th verse. What happens to the unsuccessful yogi? Not able to complete the transcendental journey. And Krishna has been describing what happens. We have seen this also in the last several classes. Let us just take a look at today's verse, and then we'll just briefly recap what has been spoken previously. Tatratam buddhi samyogam labhate paurvadehikam yatate cha tato bhuyah samsiddhau kurunandana. Tatratam buddhi samyogam. Thereafter, that means there has been something described before. Thereafter. Thereafter means something has been described before. So we will just see that in a bit. But what happens thereafter? Buddhi samyogam. Buddhi samyogam. Yogam is to link. Samyogam. Revival of such consciousness. So buddhi here is consciousness. Samyogam is revival, to revive that link with the divine. Buddhi samyogam. Labhate paurvadehikam. Labhate is regains. And what is it that he regains? Paurvadehikam, previous bodily consciousness. So here the bodily consciousness, it means a state of mind. The previous state of mind, the state of consciousness, the sum total of consciousness, chittam, paurvadehikam. Yatate cha tato bhuyaha samsiddhau kurunandana. So with that consciousness, he again freshly makes endeavor, fresh endeavor to progress from where he was. Samsiddhau, to achieve perfection. Samsiddhau is for perfection. Kurunandana, O son of Kuru. So thereafter, on taking such a birth, he again revives the divine consciousness of his previous life. And he tries to make further progress in order to achieve complete success, O son of Kuru. So on taking such a birth, what kind of birth is being talked about? Let us see that. First thing is, Krishna starts by saying that a person who is taking to Krishna consciousness, taking to the process of transcendental self-realization, the transcendental process of self-realization, need not in any way be afraid, because such a person does not meet with destruction either in this world or in the next world. One who does good is never evil, overcome by evil. This is the promise made by Krishna. So such a yogi who is not able to achieve perfection in his endeavors, transcendental endeavors, need not be worried at all, because Krishna has given a wonderful promise that he will not be destroyed, which means he will not fall down into material consciousness. Krishna gives that protection. And a person who is done by good, person who does good, is never overcome by evil. Krishna gives this second protection also. And how does he do that? What is the mechanism that Krishna has created for unsuccessful yogi? This applies to all of us. Because when we take to the process of Krishna consciousness, we always have this doubt in our mind. Can we actually achieve the exalted position of the Goswamis, of the wonderful Transcendentalists, wonderful devotees like Ambarish Maharaj in this lifetime? Prabhupada is asking us that in this one lifetime, one must attain perfection and go back home, back to Godhead. And no doubt all of us have this doubt. Really? Somebody like me, who is constantly thinking of material sense enjoyment, and somehow we have come to Krishna consciousness and we are practicing, but we can see how our thoughts are, how our consciousness polluted, and we barely manage to drag ourselves to these classes, barely manage to drag ourselves into chanting. So how it is possible for someone like us to attain perfection in this life? This doubt, and then this becomes a discouragement. And soon after, people, many individuals, after taking to Krishna consciousness after some time, they feel that this is a hopeless task and they give up. But this verse and the set of verses Krishna is providing such a safety net. If you were to imagine a young acrobat who's performing a trick on a balance beam, sometimes we see, nowadays it is not visible so much in India, but at least when I was younger, I could see in the streets, there would be some acrobats. There will be a father and a child, or a mother and a child, and the child will be made to do various tricks, like going on top of a pole and balancing with a long beam and doing various kinds of acrobatics on the pole, which is situated high up in the air, maybe 10-15 feet in the air. And the child knows very well that if the child slips and falls, the father is there to catch. So the child is not afraid at all. But had that safety net not been there, and of course in circus also you can see that the circus acrobats, they perform so many wonderful feats. They are secure in their knowledge that underneath, just above the floor, there is a net. But all the lights are switched off. The audience cannot see the net. It's not very prominent. But you can see that when they finish their act, they come and they jump onto the net, and then there's a bouncy net, almost like a trampoline. And that gives them security. So this knowledge that there is a safety net is actually a very important knowledge. With this knowledge, we can freely make our unrestricted, our uninhibited attempt at advancing in Krishna consciousness. So Krishna says in these verses that the unsuccessful yogi, when he's faltering, so Prabhupada gives this clarification in the purport, that he may falter in an early stage. The early stage itself, just 10% you have taken up to Krishna consciousness and immediately given up. Maybe you can chanting 4 rounds, after that never advanced beyond that. Give up. Or the opposite of that, person keeps trying till the end, but Maya is very strong, so does not become a pure devotee, does not get fully purified, does not get fully cleansed. There are some attachments, family, sense enjoyment, that don't go away. So in spite of endeavoring all their life, and in spite of serving the mission of the Lord by serving the mission of the pure devotee all their life, still they may not be fully free of contamination. So one could be either of these, or it could lie anywhere in between. Prabhupada says that if a person falters in the early stage, then that statement by Krishna, that such a person, unsuccessful yogi, goes to the higher planets, that applies. Because you see, in the higher planets, the duration of life is very, very long. Prabhupada says the duration of life in the higher planets is such that 6 months on Earth is 1 day in these higher planets. And by such calculation, by such 1 day, 2nd day, 3rd day, 4th day, that means just see how many months on the Earth are passing. Like that, 1 year, 2 year, 3 year. In the planets of the Devatas, where the pious dwell, the lifespan is 10,000 such years. Very nice facilities for enjoying our senses. So even a small amount of progress that somebody makes and then fails, gives up, the person is assured that they will go to higher planets where the pious living entities dwell, and they get to spend 10,000 years to enjoy the facilities in such planets. And then will they come down and become some animal or a worm or something like that? No. A devotee, an unsuccessful yogi, takes birth in a rich aristocratic family after completing 10,000 years, celestial years. Takes birth in a rich aristocratic family where a person does not have to worry about the resources and need not have to work very hard to earn their livelihood, can actually have the opportunity to practice the path of self-realization from the point where they left off. Or they may take birth in pious family, which is even better, because there is always a chance that if you take birth in a rich family, that you may get distracted, that after all there are so many so many facilities that are available in a rich family, one may become proud that, oh, I'm a rich person, I've got all these facilities at my disposal. Let me enjoy a little bit more. Because when you take birth in that rich family, you've forgotten that you've already enjoyed 10,000 celestial years in higher planets. Completely forgotten that. The person is taking birth in a rich family and he's completely forgotten the previous lives. So there is always a chance that one may get addicted to the facilities. So slightly better than that is to take birth in a pious family, where parents are practicing austerity, simplicity, following the Vedic principles, Vedic religion, aiming for a higher purpose in life. So this is another kind of birth that you could take. Or Krishna says, and Prabhupada says in the purport that this is the best of the three, takes birth in the family of Transcendentalist. So a person, after enjoying several 10,000 years in the higher planets, may take birth in the family of Transcendentalist, where you get the maximum probability, maximum chance of reviving Krishna consciousness from the very beginning. Because in a family of Transcendentalist, there is no risk of getting lost in following the Karma Kanda sections of the Vedas. Because when you take birth in pious families, you're born into Sattva Guna. And as we know, Sattva Guna is also conditioning. One can get addicted to the happiness that one feels in leading a sattvic life. So that is also binding. Taking birth in the family of Transcendentalist is the best, because right from the beginning, the direct path of Krishna consciousness is taught. Direct path of renouncing worldly comforts is taught, and a person can revive their consciousness from previous life. But in all the three states, in any of these three states, what Krishna is saying in the verse today is that in any of these three states, the person has the facility to revive Paurva Dehikam, previous consciousness, the state of mind that the person had as he was a yogi in his previous life before he went to the heavenly planets. Whatever stage of yogic perfection that was achieved by this person can be revived. That is reminded. That gets revived. And in the next verse, which we'll study in the next week, we will see that in fact that happens without any effort. Effortlessly that gets revived. But we will see that in the next week. In today's week, all that Krishna is saying in this verse is that such a person, having taken such a birth, any of these three categories, will revive the previous state of consciousness and then make further endeavors to achieve complete success. Of course, if a person does not give up in the early stage, but persists throughout his life and advances in the path of self-realization, then for such a person, Krishna does not tempt him by putting such a person in higher planetary systems, but rather he is directly given an opportunity to advance without any distractions, because Krishna understands that this person is sincere and he has tried his best, but because Maya is very strong, he has had some leftover residual contamination, which Krishna gives opportunity to clean in the next birth by directly placing that person in the family of Transcendentalist. And of course, Prabhupada gives his own example, how he himself was born into a family of such Transcendentalists. And from the very childhood, he had the opportunity to pick up devotional service. But we should understand that Srila Prabhupada is not an example of an advanced Transcendentalist who has failed to achieve perfection. Because Nitya Siddha, or eternally liberated persons, are also placed in the family of Transcendentalists when they appear here on earth to liberate us. So just because a person is in the family of Transcendentalists does not mean that he's a yoga bhrashta, that he's a failed Transcendentalist from the previous birth. It is not like that. The example of Srila Prabhupada and his spiritual master Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj is given. That is a different example. Out of humility, he says, but he's saying that really to stress the importance of such birth. That do not take it lightly. Because one may think that after all, Prabhupada's disciples, they were not necessarily born in the family of Transcendentalists, but they all took very seriously to the path of self-realization, to the path of devotion. And under the guidance of Prabhupada, several of them would have no doubt achieved perfection in their lives. But taking birth in such a family of Transcendentalists has wonderful advantages that Prabhupada explains in the previous verse. Yesterday we saw that. So this is the previous birth that is being talked about in this verse today. And let us look at the purport. I've just broken it down into 5 points. King Bharata, who took his third birth in the family of a good Brahmana, is an example of good birth for the revival of previous transcendental consciousness. So Prabhupada is giving an example of King Bharata. And the second point, King Bharata was the emperor of the world. And since his time, this planet is known among the demigods as Bharatavarsha. Formerly, it was known as Ilavritavarsha. So this entire planet, not just the part that is called India today, and sometimes you see in social media and all, etc., that there is a term called Akhanda Bharat, which includes Pakistan, Afghanistan, and Burma, and Bangladesh, etc. It is not all. Actually, the entire planet was called Bharatavarsha. And this was known among the demigods by this name. Formerly, before, that is, formerly means before King Bharata. So before King Bharata, it was called Ilavritavarsha. In one place, Prabhupada also says that it was called Ajanabi, or Ajanabi. Ajanabi or Ajanabi, I'm not 100% sure. So these were the names that were given before, and after King Bharata ruled the world, it was called Bharatavarsha. The emperor, at an early stage, retired for spiritual perfection, but failed to achieve success. In his next life, he took birth in a family of a good Brahmana and was known as Jadabharata because he always remained secluded and did not talk to anyone. And later, he was discovered as the greatest transcendentalist by King Rahugana. From his life, it is understood that the transcendental endeavors or the practice of yoga never go in vain. By the grace of the Lord, the transcendentalist gets repeated opportunities for complete perfection in Krishna consciousness. So, if you see King Bharata, he took this birth, third birth. So there were 2 other births, we will see what they were. He took his third birth in the family of a good Brahmana. He's an example of good birth for revival of previous transcendental consciousness. So if you see the graphic that we just saw, a good birth could be either a pious family, because good Brahmana means, normally it means pious families. But in this case, it is described in Bhagavatam that when he appeared in this family, his father not only was just a good Brahmana, but he was also self-realized. And he was always in trance. He was not deviated, fixed in his endeavor to be on the path of perfection. So as such, you could call him a pious family, or you could call it a family of transcendentalist. However, it is also been said in Bhagavatam that only his father was like that. Parents were like that, father was like that. But his brothers were not like that. Their brothers were not transcendentalist. They were not even pious Brahmanas. They were not very advanced. And they gave him a lot of trouble after his father had departed. So in that sense, you could call it a pious family, but partially pious, partially transcendentalist. The point is, he got very good opportunity from the childhood. But he knew, because he had done all these, he had gone through the tribulations of falling down, of being unsuccessful in his first attempt. And then he got the body of a deer. And then after the lifetime of deer was over, Then he got this birth in the family of a pious Brahmana. And because he had gone through this, he wanted to be extremely alert. And it is said in the purport that we were just reading that he's also called Jada Bharata, because he always remained secluded and did not talk to anyone. So this concept of revival, there are two other examples given by Prabhupada. I'll very briefly mention them, and then we'll go deeper into this example of Bharat Maharaj. One example that Prabhupada gives is that of sage Vishwamitra. So sage Vishwamitra, in the same life, he revives his consciousness. He does not take multiple lifetimes. So Vishwamitra takes up. He is a king, and in his palace, his priest is the sage Vasishtha, who is a advanced transcendentalist, and King Vishwamitra wants to also advance in self-realization. So he gives up his kingdom and he takes to ascetic life and starts meditation. After intense meditation, as he is progressing more and more, Lord Indra in the heaven becomes perturbed that perhaps Vishwamitra is doing such nice meditation, such wonderful, strong, austere yogic process. No doubt he will attain perfection and he will take away my position. And being anxious to lose his position, he sends his celestial society girl, Menaka, to disturb the meditation of Vishwamitra. So while Vishwamitra is meditating, Menaka comes and Vishwamitra's eyes are closed. And as Menaka starts to move around, dance near him, just by the sound of her bangles, Vishwamitra becomes aware of the presence of a woman. His mind becomes agitated. He opens his eyes and sees the beautiful form of Menaka. And he falls down from his position. And later, after having spent some time with Menaka, they give birth to a child. And Menaka brings her child in front of Vishwamitra. And then seeing the child, immediately Vishwamitra revives his previous consciousness. Although it was in the same birth, but it's practically a different life for him. Because he has forgotten his life of asceticism, of his Krishna consciousness. Of course, he has not taken to pure devotion. He has not taken to the process of pure devotion. He has taken to the process of Ashtanga Yoga. And in that process, such possibilities of such fall down are very much there. Such as Shaubari Muni is another example, how he fell down. Whereas the process of Krishna consciousness under the guidance of a pure devotee like Srila Prabhupada, such fall down does not happen. But Vishwamitra, he had completely forgotten about his path, about the purpose of life, and had started living a family life. And as soon as he saw the child, in an instant he was reminded of what he was trying to do. He has given up his kingdom. He has come here to practice self-realization, and he has completely lost his way. So he gives up that family, he gives up Menaka and the child, and he goes away to revive his endeavor for achieving perfection. This revival of consciousness is actually a benediction of the Lord. Sarvasya chaham hridi sannivishto matta smritir jnanam apohanam cha. Sarvasya chaham hridi sannivishto. What is that verse exactly? Matta smritir jnanam apohanam cha vedescha sarvairahameva vedanta krit veda vichaham. So from Krishna only remembrance and forgetfulness comes. If somebody has made a sincere attempt to understand my true position, who am I? Am I this body? Am I spirit soul? And the natural consequence of that, even if a person is following the mental speculative process of Jnana Yoga, or whether that person is following the Ashtanga Yoga process by focusing on the Paramatma within the heart, trying to understand, trying to focus on Paramatma, or he's trying to understand Bhagavan feature of the Lord and trying to practice how to be a good servant of the servant of the Lord. In any of these practices, if for any reason he becomes deviated and starts to lose his focus, then Krishna, seated as Paramatma in the heart, revives the consciousness by reminding him and placing that person in situations that gives him opportunities to remind himself about what he was doing previously. As such, if somebody sees a child, will that person remember on the path of self-realization? Ordinarily, no. But Vishwamitra, when he saw the child, he reminded him, oh, what am I doing here? I have now become a family man. I came here to learn, to achieve self-realization and see what has happened to me. So at the right time for each person, the time is different. What circumstances will click is different for each person. Another example Prabhupada gives is Vishwamitra Thakur. Vishwamitra Thakur, in his previous life, was an advanced devotee. But due to some reason, he was not able to achieve. He was unsuccessful yogi, bhakti yogi. And then he was born in the family of a rich Brahmana, rich family. But he was attracted to a woman, a prostitute, to whom he was very much attached. And it was to a degree where even at the time when his father passed away and he had to perform the last rites, his mind was actually on the prostitute. How can I get out of here? How I can go there soon? So somehow or the other, he finishes his last rites, and the same night, when it is raining heavily, the prostitute is very sure that today he will not come. Although he used to come visit her every day, but she was sure today it is not possible. It is so raining so heavily. But somehow or the other, he climbs over a wall. There is a river. He has to cross a river to reach her. And as in the river, when he goes, the river is flooding and it is breaching the banks, and he's not able to walk across it. But there is one dead body that has been burnt partially. It has been thrown in the river. He catches the dead body and stays afloat and crosses the river. And then he goes to the prostitute's house. The doors are locked. He climbs over the wall, but he's not able to reach the wall. And he sees there's a tree and there is some roots that are hanging. And then he climbs over that, catches hold of the root and climbs over the wall, and then realizes that it is actually not a root, it is a snake that is hanging. But he's not afraid. He is so much captivated by this woman that he's willing to do all these things, to hold on to a dead body in the dead of the night in a flooding river, to cross a river, to hold on to a snake which is hanging from a tree, to cross a wall. And then he reaches her house, and when she looks at him and she hears the story of how he has done it, she becomes so disgusted at him, and she says, if you had only this same amount of eagerness in taking to devotional service, you would have been the greatest devotee. Hearing the word Krishna come from the mouth of the prostitute immediately revives his purva dehikam, his consciousness from his previous life, and he gives up all the debauchery, he gives up all these anarthas and takes very seriously to the process of devotional service. So whereas for us, so many times we hear the word Krishna being said by senior devotees, but that does not necessarily trigger the thought in us. Sometimes it does, sometimes it does not. What will trigger the thought for somebody? What will make someone take to the process? It actually is different for each person. And Krishna knows that and creates opportunities. In spite of giving these opportunities, not everybody takes those opportunities. And actually the life of Bharata is an example of both how Krishna gives opportunities and how a person deliberately chooses to not use the opportunity. Both examples are there in this. So let us just take a look at this wonderful pastime that has been described in Srimad Bhagavatam for our benefit, so that we may learn from this. And in each of those, this particular pastime of Bharat Maharaj, endeavoring for perfection and then failing in that, and then being given multiple chances, multiple opportunities. These span 7 chapters in Srimad Bhagavatam. It's a very important episode. 7 chapters in the 5th canto are dedicated to the life and pastimes of Bharat Maharaj. Comes immediately after the teachings of Rishabhadeva. Bharat Maharaj is one of the 100 sons of Rishabhadeva. So, when Bharat Maharaj gives up his kingdom and he goes to the forest, he goes to this place where the Gandaki river flows, and it is called the Pulaha Ashrama. Pulaha Ashrama. This is a place near Haridwar. It's a place near Haridwar, and there's a river called Gandaki River. That is where the Shalagrama Shilas, they are obtained in the river. So Bharat Maharaj, he goes to that. But before he comes to the stage, it may be very interesting to note that Bharat Maharaj ruled as a very pious and a very detached king, performing all the Vedic sacrifices as mentioned in the scriptures for several years. This number of years that Bharat Maharaj ruled may come as a shock or a surprise to all of you. But it is said in Bhagavatam that he ruled for 1,000 times 10,000 years. In other words, 10 million years. Bharat Maharaj ruled for 10 million years. It is stunning, and this kind of a time scale is just not comprehensible to modern science or to modern civilization. But there was a time when a person who was advanced in yogic perfection, he could live such life. And they are called Raja Rishis. They are kings who lived their life as a sage would live a life. And particularly Bharat Maharaj lived for 10 million years as a king. And after that, he renounced his kingdom. He divided his kingdom amongst his 5 children, and then took to the renounced order of life. And then he went to this Pulaha Ashrama near Haridwar. And he used to live very simply. And he was worshipping the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vasudeva. And he was very satisfied. His heart was completely uncontaminated. He did not have any desire for material enjoyment. All material desires had vanished. So he was fully situated in devotional service. Prabhupada says in the purport of this particular verse, everyone is searching after peace of mind. But how to get this peace of mind? That we do not know. Prabhupada says that this peace of mind is obtainable only when one is completely freed from the desire for material sense gratification and is engaged in devotional service of the Lord. And devotional service is not very difficult. Patram pushpam phalam toyam yome bhaktya prayachati. Nor is it very expensive. One can offer a leaf, a flower, a fruit, some water. The Supreme Lord accepts these offerings when they are offered with love and devotion. In this way, one can become freed from material desires. As long as one maintains material desires, he cannot be happy. As soon as one engages in devotional service of the Lord, his mind is purified of all material desires. Then one becomes fully satisfied. Prabhupada says that the laws of nature, they work in very, very subtle ways. Maharaj Bharata was a great king, very advanced in devotional service. he had almost reached the point of loving service to the Supreme Lord, bhava stage. So he used to get the ecstatic symptoms of the Ashta Sattvika transformations in the body. Hair standing on the end, tears constantly flowing from his eyes, and sometimes laughing, sometimes crying, sometimes dancing. All these transformations of the body were spontaneously visible in Bharat Maharaj. So he had reached that point. But even from that platform, a person could fall down. And so this is an example of that we should keep in mind, that even in such a state, there is always some material contamination. Overcoming Maya, Mama Maya, Duratyaya. It's not easy. So Bharat Maharaj, he saw once how there was a deer that was crossing the river, and the deer was being chased by a lion. And as the lion roared, the deer became very much afraid, and the deer was pregnant. So out of fear, the baby in the womb, the baby deer, immediately came out of the deer, and in the shock of being chased by the lion, the mother deer crossed the river, but then immediately fell into a cave and immediately died out of the shock. This baby child deer that has just been born without its mother fell into the river and is helplessly floating, and came near where Bharat Maharaj was standing in the river and offering his prayers. And Bharat Maharaj became very, very compassionate towards the deer. And then he saw that this deer does not have any protection and has come to me, so it is my duty to protect this deer. And gradually, Bharat Maharaj became very affectionate towards the deer. He began to raise it and maintain it by giving it grass. He was very careful to protect it from the attacks of tigers and other animals. Whenever the deer would feel some itch, he would actually scratch the deer. He would pet the deer. And in this way, just like a dog, right? Dog will come and sit near your leg. You will pet the deer. You will pet the dog. Similarly, Bharat Maharaj, he would pet it, he would scratch it, and he tried to keep the deer in a very comfortable condition. Sometimes he will just hug the deer and kiss the deer out of love. Being so attached to raising the deer, Bharat Maharaj forgot the rules and regulations of advancement of spiritual life. And he gradually forgot the worship of Supreme Personality of Godhead. After a few days, he forgot everything about his spiritual advancement. So, Prabhupada gives the example that how we should be very, very cautious in executing our spiritual duties by observing rules and regulations and regularly chanting Hare Krishna Mahamantra. If we neglect doing this, we will eventually fall down. If we neglect to chant Hare Krishna Mahamantra regularly, we will eventually fall down. We must rise early in the morning, bathe, attend Mangalarti, worship the deities, and chant Hare Krishna Mantra, study the Vedic literatures, and follow all the rules prescribed by the Acharyas and the spiritual master. If we deviate from the process, we may fall down, even though we may be very highly advanced. And there is a quotation given from Bhagavad Gita 18.5. Yajna dana tapak karma natyajyam karyam evatat yajno danam tapaschaiva bhavanani manishina. Acts of sacrifice, charity, and penance are not to be given up, but should be performed. Indeed, sacrifice, charity, and penance purify even the greatest soul, even the great soul. So these regulative principles, chanting of Hare Krishna Mahamantra should never be given up. And Bharat Maharaj's condition was that he got so attached to the deer that gradually he forgot to do all these things. And he gradually even stopped doing. First of all, he used to be distracted, and eventually he completely stopped rendering this devotional service. And he used to think how his mind used to justify. Because after all, you may ask, Bharat Maharaj, after being 10 million years, after performing so many, being a king, such a righteous king, he gave up his kingdom. And then he took to the process of worshipping the Supreme Lord Vasudeva. And he has forgotten all of that. Will his consciousness not prick him? Will it not ask him, what is this? Why are you attached to the deer? So here is where we have to understand the power of the mind. The mind was tricking Bharat Maharaj, and the mind was making him think that, oh, this helpless deer this by the force of time. And after all, time is agent of Supreme Personality of Godhead. Kalosmi, aham kalosmi, he says, right? So time is agent of Supreme Personality of Godhead, and forced by the time, this deer has come in my shelter. It has no mother, it has no father, and I have now become his mother, father, brother, every relative. I am only there for this deer, poor deer. It's completely, he has got its full faith in me. It doesn't know anybody but me. Now, if I should become selfish and I should ignore this deer and start to do my meditation, and I take up my devotional service and I engage in that, I will not be able to take care of this deer. Is that not very selfish? This deer has come to me for protection. Is it not my responsibility to raise it, provide it all the love, gratify it, fondle it, kiss it, hug it? Is it not my responsibility to do all this? Even though because of this deer, my spiritual life is getting spoiled. But what can I do? I have to take care of the deer. That is the responsibility that has been given to me. That is the service that Krishna has given to me in the form of time. So I have to do this service. So like this, the mind is giving justifications to Bharat Maharaj. Sometimes due to attachment with the deer, Bharat Maharaj would lie down, just like today. So many people, they have pet dogs at home. The dog will come and lie down in the bed with them. Similarly, Bharat Maharaj would lie down along with the deer. He will walk around with the deer. He will bathe with the deer. He will eat with the deer. So that his heart became completely bound to the deer in affection. Sometimes Bharat Maharaj would go to the forest to collect grass, kusha grass, flowers, wood, leaves, fruits, roots, and water. He would worry about leaving the deer alone in his ashram. He would fear that the dogs, jackals, tigers, and other ferocious animals might kill the deer. So what he would do? He would take the deer along with him. And sometimes the deer, because it is a child deer, small deer, it will act in funny ways, in childish behavior, and that he would find very, very attractive. Sometimes he would even carry the deer on his shoulder. And he will, just like you carry a child, a father will carry a young child, a toddler, or a preschooler. Sometimes you carry it on the shoulders, right? Similarly, Bharat Maharaj would carry the deer on his shoulders. So he would feel great pleasure in being with this deer and taking care of the deer in this way. And sometimes when he was performing some ritualistic ceremony, or he was engaged in worshipping the Supreme Lord, he would sometimes get up, even though he's not finished his activity. In between, he will get up. And then he'll go and check, where is the deer? Oh, is it there? Has it had the food? So like this, sometimes we also do this, right? When chanting is going on. Chanting is 16 rounds. We are not stopped. We're not finished 16 rounds. But in between, our mind is going, has my child done this or done that? Where is he? And or maybe you look at WhatsApp to see whether there is any note that has come from somebody else, or maybe check your email to see whether your boss has said something. So like this, he was attached to the deer. And for us, we'll think, what's the big deal? But this is Bharat Maharaj. He has lived for 10 million years as a king, and has given up, everything and come to the forest, particularly for advancing. And he has reached the Bhava stage. So he fell down in this way. So this mind is very, very strong, and the Maya is very strong. And it is seen how in the name of philanthropy, altruism, communism, the people justify that they feel compassionate towards suffering humanity. And then they say that, why are you wasting your time in chanting Hare Krishna? Look at so many people, they are so hungry. We should feed the world. We should give them clothes. But actually, they do not realize, these philanthropists and altruists, they do not realize that it is impossible to improve people's material conditions. The material conditions are already established by the superior administration according to one's karma. That cannot be changed. And the only benefit we can render to the suffering being is actually to try to raise them to spiritual consciousness. Material comforts, they cannot be increased or decreased. We have seen in Bhagavatam class, we have been studying the conversation between Narada Muni and Vyasadeva, There is one verse, Tal labhyate dukkavad anyatha sukham. That um, just as the miseries, nobody goes out seeking for miseries. All the difficulties in our life, they come unsought. Nobody says, oh, I want COVID, please give me COVID. Nobody says like that. But it comes. Similarly, the material happiness that is due to a person, that also comes without any effort. It automatically comes. There is no way in which you can increase material happiness of somebody. Even if somebody is given a lot of money, still whatever 4 chapatis, 5 chapatis a person is eating, cannot eat more than that. Whatever, at the time when you go to sleep, your bed is 6 feet in length, and a twin bed, you can say, 3 feet in width, 4 feet in width. If you sleep on a queen bed also, you get only half of that bed, 3 or 4 feet in width and 6 feet in length. That's all you can get. Just because you are very opulent and rich does not mean that sleep will be any better quality, does not mean that food will be any better quality. The material happiness actually cannot be increased or decreased. Whatever one is due, it will naturally come. The real philanthropy, the real benefit that we can give to people is actually to introduce them to Krishna consciousness. So this Bharat Maharaj was acting in this manner, so completely attached to this deer. So if this is the case of Bharat Maharaj, then imagine the case of ordinary people who become so attached to cats and dogs. What will happen to them? So Prabhupada says that due to their affection for cats and dogs, they have to take the same bodily forms in their next life. Unless they clearly increase their affection and love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Unless we increase our faith in the Supreme Lord, we shall be attracted to many other things. And that is the cause of our material bondage. Yesterday Prabhu was saying, Karanam gunasangasya sadasa joni janmashu. So that is the reason for us to be born in this various species of life, is our association with material modes of nature, as opposed to being attached to the Supreme Lord. As we get attached to these different material modes of nature, then we have to take birth among those species, depending upon the kind of association we have had. So Bharat Maharaj would, sometimes he could not see his deer, and he would get very agitated. And he would go seeking, where did my deer go? Where did my deer go? And so one day the deer walked out and never came back. So he used to think, Bharat Maharaj used to think that probably I was deficient in taking care of the deer, and that is why the deer has left me. And maybe I did not fulfill the promise. The deer came to me for shelter. Probably there is some mistake in my taking care of the deer. And although it is just an animal, see, Bharat Maharaj has forgotten the deer does not have evolved consciousness. It cannot think like a human being. And there is no way to deliver the deer by giving it any kind of education in Krishna consciousness. It is not possible. But he has forgotten all of that, and he started he has become materially attached to the deer. And he was thinking that maybe this deer has left me because I have failed the deer in the faith that it had placed in me. So like this he used to think. And then of course the deer did not return after some time. And so Bharat Maharaj, he became like a madman, always thinking about the deer, regretting, lamenting, oh, where is the deer gone? And just you would see the deer everywhere, just as a parent sees the child. After the child, sometimes the child goes to school. The mother has sent the child to school, but then in the house there is a socks, or a shoe, or a lunchbox, or a bag, or something, or a cloth. Everything in the house reminds the mother about the child. So like this, exactly like a son, he used to love the deer, in spite of the deer having left his ashram. Still he was very much attached, to the extent that when he saw the deer's footprints, he thought that, oh, this whole place has become sanctified just because of the deer's footprint. So like to that extent he had become degraded, that he used to think that the deer is actually some kind of a pious incarnation, like another sage. So just like Bharat Maharaj himself was a sage, he thought this deer is also another sage. And look, this deer's footprints are there. And he used to feel attracted towards the deer's footprints, as if it is a lotus feet of some pure devotee. So that had been his position. So Prabhupada explains that is this because of past karma? Because a person has become materially attached like this. Normally, a materialistic person, the manner in which the materialistic person is exposed, is placed in different circumstances, is a direct result of his past activities, karma. If a person has got good karma, pious activity, pious credit, he is placed in favorable circumstances that allow him to take up Krishna consciousness. But if a person does not have pious credit, does not have good karma, then he is not given such an opportunity. Person is placed in situations that are not favorable for taking up Krishna consciousness. Of course, regardless of a person's position, regardless of what kind of a situation a person is, by the causeless mercy of a pure devotee, a person can always take up Krishna consciousness. But as such, when a person is placed in certain circumstances, it is said that it is due to karma. But in this case, it is said that it is not because of karma. Actually, when there is a propensity for enjoyment, so long as there is a small amount of propensity for enjoyment, Krishna creates a plan of how to purify, how to cleanse the heart of that propensity for enjoyment. And in order to cleanse the heart, what Krishna will do is he will place us in situations that precipitate, that bring out that propensity, so that the person can see, oh, this propensity was hiding inside me. I thought I had overcome all these things. Bharat Maharaj has come to Bhava stage. But there is some small amount of material propensity that is remaining in his heart. And Krishna has a plan of how to purify that. And when this is what Krishna says, Kaunte prasijanihi mame bhakta pranashyati. There is no situation, there is no, once a person takes up to this process, swalpamapyasya dharmasya trayate mahato bhayat. Neha bhikramanasosti pratyavayo na vidyate. So in this process of Krishna consciousness, there is no possibility of a loss or diminution. Even though a person has taken up to Krishna consciousness and there is some and made very serious effort, but still in our heart there is contamination. Krishna creates circumstances by which that it becomes very apparent to the person that, oh, look at this contamination. Oh, look at this contamination. When you start sweeping, dirt comes out. Correct? So all of us can see, those of us who have taken up to Krishna consciousness, we may think that, oh, I have been practicing for so much time, but look how my envy is coming to the fore. Look how my anger is coming to the fore. Look how my illusion, look at my illusion. I'm falling prey to illusion. So these actually, for a devotee, as you're advancing, you will see that Krishna is placing you in situations where you are easily able to get angry. Krishna is placing you in situations where you can easily fall under illusion. Krishna is placing you in situations where you can easily fall under these other under lobha or greed. The greed is coming out. Envy is coming out. So these situations that we are placed in, they are not because of our past karma, once you've taken up to Krishna consciousness, but because of the opportunity that Krishna is giving for us to purify our these contaminations in our heart. So when we see this opportunity, and then we see that, I had this particular kind of greed or this particular kind of envy, and that has come out. And when you see it face to face, and then you are able to say that, all right, now I need to guard against this in this way, and then you can make progress towards overcoming that contamination that you had. So these opportunities are constantly given by Krishna to a person who is making efforts to advance in spiritual realization. So this is the explanation for why Bharat Maharaj was placed in the situation where this deer out of nowhere has fallen into the river and has come to him. How has it come to him? It is divine arrangement, because he has got that tiny amount of contamination, and for us to set an example for all of us, he has been used as an instrument by the Lord to set this example for us and for us to learn. So, of course, at the end of that life, Bharat Maharaj, actually, it is said in Bhagavatam that he sees that deer standing next to him and lamenting over him. So even at the time of death, he is seeing the deer in front of him, and he's not able to overcome the attachment. So as he's quitting his body, thinking of the deer, yam yam vapis paran bhavam tejantyante kalevaram, tam tam evaiti kaunteya sadatat bhava bhavita. He takes the body of a deer. But by the arrangement, divine arrangement, the Supreme Lord gives him one very, very special benediction, that he remembers um, all the tribulations that he went through in his previous life. He remembers that he was a king, Bharata. He remembers that he was striving for perfection. He remembers that he had attained the Bhava stage, but still he fell down because of getting attracted to a deer, and that is how he came to this deer body. So he remembers all of that, and this time he does not make a mistake of associating with other deers. He leaves his mother deer as soon as he's born, and then he goes towards the same ashram near Haridwar and stays in the association of other devotees. Prabhupada says how important it is to have this devotee association. Those who have come to the Krishna consciousness, who have given up their families, taken up to this process very seriously, joined the ashram, how important it is, what a great opportunity it is for such persons to not then get attracted towards family and other such relationships, because that circumstance is not available to everybody. Very, very rare circumstance. And for a person to have made that incredible leap of giving up the family ties and joining the ashram, it is such a rare thing to happen in this world, that having taken to Krishna consciousness in such a way, that such person should definitely not again fall prey to family affection, but firmly be situated in the oath that I will stay in the company, association of devotees. And for those who are still living in their families, for them also, in their consciousness, should be associating with the devotee and not opening their heart to non-devotees. We heard the class the other day, how opening the heart to non-devotees means associating with non-devotees. It is not that just because you are working in office with a non-devotee does not mean association. Just because you meet some old friends from your previous life stage and you meet them on the street, does not mean association. But when you place your faith in that friendship, when you open your heart to such a person, that is called associating with non-devotee. So it is very important that as we take up to Krishna consciousness, that we place importance to this devotee association, at the same time give up the association of non-devotees, which means to not have place or faith that yes, I can get pleasure, I can get joy in the company of these non-devotees. It also means that not trying to materially take care of these non-devotees. The only way in which we can help anybody is by getting them into Krishna consciousness. There is no other way. So in this way, he passes his life of the deer, and then he takes his birth in the family of a very nice Brahmana, and that life is called Jadabharata, and he remains secluded. He acts like a madman so that he may not get attached to fame. He does not get attached to family members, because once a person acts like a normal person, immediately there is social expectation to be a good son, a good husband, a good citizen. He did not want any of these expectations. He had seen what this kind of a social ties can do. So he stayed like Avadhuta from the very beginning, and until the time that he was discovered by the king Rahugana. And the conversation between King Rahugana and Jadabharata itself takes 2 or 3 chapters in Srimad Bhagavatam, very detailed conversation. Perhaps some other day you can look at that. But very important for devotees, Prabhupada's lesson in this to us in the example of Bharat Maharaj is that we should strive to inculcate these qualities of devotees. And one very important quality that Prabhupada stresses is called avyartha kalatvam. Avyartha kalatvam. This means that having this intense awareness of the passage of time. Time is of essence, and a devotee does not waste even a moment to see how can I serve the Lord, how can I serve the mission of the pure devotee of the Lord. This consciousness is guiding all our actions. Then our life gets molded in a way that we are able to spend our time 24 hours thinking about how to serve the mission of the pure devotee of the Lord. And in this way, we can advance in the Krishna consciousness and not fall down, while at the same time realizing that there is a safety net below. And Krishna personally creates circumstances for us, not given by, no longer we are governed by laws of karma. Krishna places us in situations where we can see our anarthas. They come out, and it gives us opportunity to cleanse those anarthas. That is why it is seen that sometimes devotees are also placed in seemingly difficult situations. It is not because of past karma. So with this, I'll stop here and see if you have any questions.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you for the presentation, Prabhu. I have one question.
So,
When you said the philanthropists or the other human servants thinks that it is their responsibility, just like giving a paradigm example of Bharat Maharaj, then how should I respond if I see a non-family member or a relative or a friend or my own parent, someone who is suffering from any other illnesses? Should I consider that I'm only serving the Paramatma in him, or because I mean, before saying this, I want to understand that it is our own ISKCON temples are also serving the Krishna Prasadam at every other mishaps we have been observing in the global crisis. How should I understand that activity? And after that, please also help me understand or enlighten on this issue as well.
So first, let me ask you this question. You mentioned that Srila Prabhupada's temples, they are serving Krishna Prasadam, and they have such programs all over the world. What is the intent behind that?
That itself is an elation of that particular human form, which is like when you said rightly that it's introduction of Krishna consciousness. So I think that prasadam itself is a foundation step for that.
Yes. So for a materialistic person, materialistically minded person, if you try to understand where is God, who is God, what is my purpose of life, just by our own blunt instruments, it is not possible to understand Krishna. Krishna is fully transcendental and cannot be understood by blunt instruments of our senses. So therefore, Krishna has to reveal himself. And that revelation of when Krishna reveals himself, that destroys the ignorance in the heart. Where there is Krishna, there cannot be ignorance. So the way to destroy the ignorance of the person, because their suffering is happening because they are in the position of ignorance. We just said the suffering the person undergoes is a result of past karma. And what is that karma? The karma is associating with the modes of material nature. So if let us say a person is very hungry, person is not in a very good financial position, the person is suffering various ways. And if you relieve that suffering, does it mean that that future suffering will not come? It does not mean that. Correct? It doesn't mean that. So what is we have to attack the root cause of that suffering, which is the association with modes of material nature. And the way to solve that is to bring that person in touch with Krishna. So it is because of ignorance that the person is associating with modes of material nature. And to enlighten that person, we have to bring him in touch with Krishna consciousness. And the process of Krishna consciousness starts with the tongue. That is by chanting Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, Sevon Mukhehi Jivvado. So with the tongue, we can chant Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. With the tongue, we can taste Krishna Prasadam. So when we do either of these, the devotional service develops in our heart. So our goal in interacting with any non-devotee is to understand, firstly, that their suffering is suffering of the body, not the suffering of the soul. It is a body that is interacting with the material nature. It is a lump of matter. It is just some chemicals. What is the body made up of? It is after all some chemicals. Earth, water, air, ether, earth, water, fire, ether, right? Five Panchabhutas. And you see from point of view of chemistry, H2O, hydrocarbons and minerals, whatever, copper, zinc, there are some trace minerals are also present, and all kinds of, so it's just a chemical. That's all it is, isn't it? So if some chemical is deprived of some other chemical, which is basically food, there is one chemical sack here, right? Gunny bag. Imagine this is a gunny bag made of chemicals. And every day into the gunny bag, you're putting some more chemicals. That's what is happening. And this body is eating food, right? It's like you take jadu, your sweep broomstick, and you broom the dirt in the house. And in some places there is accumulation of dirt, another place there is some other accumulation of dirt. And then you bring the dirt together, it becomes a bigger pile. So you're taking some fruits, vegetables, rice, and other things from the earth, which are also a form of earth. And then you're accumulating inside this earth, which is also a form of earth. What is the significance of that? And if that accumulation doesn't happen, what is the significance of that? But then that person who's residing in that body, he is very much disturbed that, oh, I am hungry. Oh, I am having this problem. Oh, somebody did not promote me in my office. Oh, somebody beat me up today. Somebody said something bad to me. So this suffering that the soul is experiencing in that body is a result of his attachment to the misidentification of the body. That is the root cause. So whatever we do to help that person should be done with the intention of how to break that misidentification. So the purpose of giving prasadam is to break that misidentification. The purpose of maintaining relationships is so that we can, when we let us say that you are there, somebody is suffering in your family, and then you just completely ignore, say, what is this? You are a spirit soul, you're nothing. I don't care about the suffering. There is no way for that person then to take up Krishna consciousness, right? You're not helping that person in any way. So one has to be polite, one has to be understanding, one has to be empathetic, but then not to get caught up in trying to help that person's current material situations. But one has to be empathetic.
Sure. Sure, Prabhu. Thank you, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
And how are you all doing? It's been a long time.
Yes, it's nice that you're able to attend. How are you?
I'm good, Prabhu. Thanks for asking.
Any questions? Anybody would like to summarize anything that you've heard today? Mataji? Sudevi Mataji?
Let me check my notes.
Jagannath Prabhu?
Hare Krishna Prabhu. So today the class was outstanding, Prabhu. This is really, so many realization has been there, which we are actually on daily basis we are actually ignoring that, and due to that ignorance we are actually missing the opportunity to render the devotional service as a chanting and reading books and developing our Krishna consciousness further. So you have given the example of Bharat Maharaj, who has ruled 10 million years of this Bharat Varsha. Even then he was entangled. So what to talk about us? We are just insignificant. So we have to be very...
He ruled for 10 million years, and then he gave up the kingdom, and then he undertook devotional service as a full-time activity, completely renounced order, and he achieved bhava stage, and then fell down.
Yes, bro. He achieved bhava stage, and after that he fell down. So we are just insignificant. We have just started our spiritual life, and we have to be very, very careful each and every steps, and we have to be very, very serious about our spiritual life.
Yes, requires a lot of seriousness.
Yes.
But knowing our condition, Prabhupada has made it much simpler. That we don't have to give up our family, do not have to go to the forest.
Yes, Prabhu.
Our process is much simpler. But as Prabhu was saying earlier, there is a quality to the effort that we put in. And the seriousness is manifest in the quality that we put into the time that we spend in Krishna consciousness.
Yes.
So we don't have to show our seriousness by giving up family and going somewhere, etc. We have to show our seriousness by being absorbed in the devotional activity when we actually perform the devotional activity.
Yes, Prabhu. If we are doing chanting, means the quality of chanting. This is not like that. We are doing the chanting and we are just completing 16 round. No, Prabhu. Chanting means whatever the actual process Prabhupada has explained, we have to follow the exact same. Then that chanting will be successful.
Yes. And applies to the other devotional service activities also.
Yes, Prabhu.
Yes, Mataji.
Yes, Prabhu. And you have mentioned about this Bhagavad Gita 18.5th shloka, that yajna dana tapa karma, like how the acts of sacrifice, charity, and penance are not to be given up, but they should be performed because they purify the great souls.
Yes, even the great souls, even for a great soul, even for somebody who's taken up sannyas, there are charity activities should not be stopped. So prescribed duty should not be stopped. And for us, taken up to Krishna consciousness, whatever has been given to us by spiritual master, chanting of Hare Krishna Mahamantra cannot be stopped under any circumstance. No matter what the difficulty we face, sometimes we hear this. Sometimes we hear that somebody says that no, I got some difficulty in my life. Now my child is going to high school, or this year he's got SAT or something like that. I have to focus on this. Or my child is, I have to find a bride for my child. So many reasons that at this time, or my father passed away, mother passed away, something like that. My husband passed away, wife passed away. Sudden shock, untimely death of close relatives. This can be very shocking for people. Untimely death of close relatives is it can shake the foundation of a person. But it's very important for us to note that this rule that we should just put it ingrained in our head, that chanting of Hare Krishna mantra, following the processes given by Prabhupada, cannot be stopped under any circumstances. Yes, Bhagavad Prabhu. We are on mute.
Yes, bro. Sorry, bro. Yeah, initially we talked about unsuccessful yogi, how if it is fallen in early stage, what would be the in that case, he'll get a chance to enjoy in higher planets where the pious people dwell, and also after that he has to come back and take birth in a rich family or take birth in a pious
What is the key takeaway? What is your key takeaway?
There is no loss even if you advance in the spiritual. So there is no loss. So you will get rewarded so that you can progress from that point onwards.
That point onwards. Yes, wonderful. Aurvadehikam. Suddenly that it comes restored. It is like your context switching, right? In multi-threaded applications in program. Context switch happens, the state is restored. It's like that.
Yes, yeah.
Yes. Akhilesh Prabhu, you want to share something?
Hare Krishna.
Yes, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Yeah, so one realization is that so basically Krishna, like in this situation, like Jada Bharat case, Bharat Maharaj, he was put into because of his senses practice. he was given an opportunity again to revise his consciousness. Similarly, in our in lives, Krishna puts us in some situations where we can develop attachment towards him. So there will be difficulties, situations which are which actually are should realize that we need to develop more faith in Krishna than in the material activities.
Yes. The more we develop faith in Krishna, the less we have a chance of getting diverted into material attraction. And the opportunity that we talk about, it is opportunities to attain perfection or to advance in Krishna consciousness comes exactly as you said, in increasing faith for Krishna. But the way it manifests is that it brings out our anarthas. It shows, it lays bare where we stand, because we've got this idea in our head that we have advanced a lot. So it shows, oh no, look at you, where you are. Like that, it brings out our anarthas. So when that's an opportunity, each one of those occasions when we have those mini fall downs is an opportunity for us to recognize our vulnerability. So unless we know our vulnerability, how we can overcome that, how we can work upon it. So these opportunities that we get, they expose our vulnerabilities so that we can strengthen them and thereby develop our love for Krishna. Anybody else would like to share?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. I would like to. When you said, yeah, I mean, from the experiences or the past births, we are given next birth into an aristocratic family, or we don't suffer for any earning livelihood in day-to-day life. So from this lesson or today's class, it's like, yeah, I'm the example of myself, because I need not struggle for a daily livelihood, right? So this itself is an example to how I can progress ahead in Krishna consciousness.
Definitely. So in fact, Prabhupada mentions this, that all the, even the Americans who have taken shelter of Srila Prabhupada, he says that you have all got prior Krishna consciousness in your previous life. And that is how, first of all, they are all placed in America in opulent families. But when the opportunity presented, when Srila Prabhupada came and gave them Hare Krishna Mahamantra, they immediately took it up. It is not easy, even right, for a person who does not know who is Krishna, never heard of Krishna in his life. When some stranger is coming from India in saffron robes and saying, "Here is Krishna," and immediately they're taking it up. So Prabhupada very clearly mentions that yes, in this case you have had this prior Parva Dehikam. There is a prior Krishna consciousness in your previous life. That's why you, first of all, you've got an opulence, and now you also have this. You have also had natural inclination to take up Krishna consciousness.
Yes, bro. And thanks for that statement that you said. It's not your karma, but it's a situation what Krishna is placing you to, give opportunity. Because as always, like it's like an emollient on the chronic wound, actually, more than an emollient. So, thank you.
Okay, so if all of you can please come on camera and chant with me. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Krishna Hare Hare,
Krishna
Krishna, Hare Hare,
Hare Rama, Hare Rama,
Hare Rama, Hare Rama,
Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Rama, Hare Hare.
Grantraj Bhagavad Gita ki, Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki, Sai Gaur Premanande. Hare Hare. Hare